can you explain that to people, the life of service?
Yeah, I'm so glad you did what you did, Brian. Thank you for doing it.
Oh, so, me too, man. I mean, it's also selfish because it makes me feel amazing. And you articulate really well in your book. But, again, how do people start that or understand that? Because it's not taught to us. If you turn on MTV, there's no service there. It's all about the bling and the accomplishments and me, So it's not really taught in the West.
Well, one of the things, yeah, it's definitely not. And the amazing thing is, like you said, that statement, I remember saying it on stage once and then repeating it around, we're wired for generosity, but educated for greed. And it's because if you look at a young child, if you look at a young person, you'll see the desire to feel compassion for other people's suffering. Like generally, unless you're the parent, sometimes children can definitely be childish and not childlike. But when you look at the childlikeness, if a child sees someone else crying, their heart will go out. I remember walking in LA with my nephew who would see the homelessness and be like, why is that person on the streets? Like my nephew was like 3.5 years old or something. But it's like, he was curious about it. Like he didn't understand it. And there was a compassionate questioning there. The example that I give is there was a video that went viral 2 years ago where this little child crawled up to her parents' television because there's a cartoon character that's crying, and she gets a tissue from the tissue box in her living room, and she goes and tries to wipe the tear off the television. And so there are so many examples of us as children showing this natural inclination to feel compassion. And then you have the statements from Mandela and others like, no one is born hating another person. Right? We learn to hate so we can be taught to love, as Mandela and Martin Luther King and so many have told us about this. And so you look at the lives of how we were as children, and then education made it all about yourself. Education made it all about where were you going to get to. Now, what I love about talking about service, first of all, for anyone who's unaware, is the studies done on service. So Michael Norton at Cambridge University, he has a brilliant TED Talk. And I go into depth about his study in the book, but he really talks about how students were given $5 to $20, either to spend on themselves or spend on other people. And so they could spend the $5. So half of them were asked to spend $5 on themselves and $20 on themselves. Half of them were asked to spend $5 on someone else or $20 on somewhere else. After they did the study, they found that most people bought three things, either from themselves or for others: Starbucks, makeup, and Starbucks. Those are the top three purchases, he says. And so he found that whether you spent $5 or $20 on yourself or others, when people spent it on themselves, their happiness didn't go up or down. It stayed the same. But when people spent $5 or $20 on someone else, their happiness went up, I believe he says, by at least 10%. And so the only increase in happiness was when we're giving to others. They changed the amounts. They changed the countries. They even tested this with giving time. And they found every time, whether it's time, money, energy, or resources, humans were happier and more joyful when they gave to others. So scientifically, it's there. People who had depression, if they were helping other people with depression, their depression decreased. It's incredible that in every area of life, giving and being of service creates joy. Why? So let's talk about why. The reason is because when you serve, you get so many more gifts. The first gift you get when you serve is gratitude. When you serve someone, you get gratitude because you realize how much you have. And you get to realize how grateful that person is for what they get. When we used to go as monks and give food to these children in schools in India so that they could get a warm meal per day, these kids, we would give them one bowl of rice pudding, sweet rice or kheer in India. And literally it would be this tiny little cup. And their face would just light up with this tiny little cup. I was just at the ashram again in January. I go back every year. And when I was there in January, I was looking at kids playing with a stick and a little fruit, like as a ball, because that's all they had. And they were laughing and they were running around and so happy. And so first of all, it gives you gratitude. Second thing, when you serve people, the second gift you get is you gain perspective. You start to realize that what you grew up around isn't the only reality in the world. There are so many different experiences of humanity. So it gives you a sense of perspective. And the third gift that service gives you, which is probably the greatest, is it gives you human connection. If you serve someone, they'll probably never forget it. And if you serve someone, you'll never forget it. And as we know from the 75-year Harvard study on human happiness, human connection is the deepest form or indicator of human satisfaction. And so on all these accounts, service wins as the greatest thing that we can all do. And I think the mistake we make is that we think we have to serve in a big way. We think service means millions of downloads or billions of views or millions of followers. And I can honestly say that I was trying to serve since 14 years ago, 15 years ago, when I met the monk for the first time. I'm still trying to serve today. And I believed I was serving the best of what I had then, and I'm serving the best of what I had today. So the way I recommend to people to find their service is simply add compassion to your passion. When you add an element of how do I take my passion and what I am drawn towards and use that in the service of others, that is when I will feel this full, whole life. And that's why you find that the wealthiest people in the world, the most successful people in the world, ultimately have to turn towards philanthropy, or they have to turn towards pledging to give away their wealth over their lifetime. Because even after accumulating everything on the planet, you realize that the only joy is in wanting to give it away. And so whether you have money or time or energy to give, it doesn't matter. It is about the sincerity of intent. And so I know people who've signed checks for millions of dollars. One does it for PR and one does it for their heart. And the one who gives it for PR is not happy. They're not happy because they didn't give it for anything else apart from that article in the media to show that they were a good person. The other person who gave it because their heart was there, even if they got no PR for it, they're completely satisfied. And so giving is not about how much money you have, how much time you have, or how much energy or resources you have. It's about giving with the sincerity of intent to alleviate someone's suffering. And when you live that way and just test it a tiny bit, you don't have to go and serve a charity for 10 days or any of that. Just do one tiny thing and then do one more thing and then do one more thing and keep adding to it. And I think COVID has shown us the level of service. I've seen people teach their next door neighbor's kids a subject because their parents are busy working. I've seen people donate to charities. I've seen people deliver groceries for elderly people in their towns. Like, we've seen this all on the media and the news and social media. And it makes me realize that the most beautiful thing that's come out of all of this is people serving others, whether it's teaching fitness classes off of rooftops or back gardens and social distancing. Those are the things that bring joy to our heart at this time. You know, just because someone gave a lot of money, that doesn't bring joy. What brings joy is seeing someone use their talents to serve others.